Yes, this is another video on the seven churches of Revelation. Today's video is Pergamos as Jerusalem. Where was Satan's throne and who was Antipas? In the last two videos on the seven churches, we talked about the possibility that the island of Patmos was a symbol for Jerusalem. And then we talked about how Thyatira was also possibly a symbol for Jerusalem. In today's video, we're going to look at Pergamos as a symbol for Jerusalem. And keep in mind, as we did on these other videos, the first verse of the book of Revelation says, the revelation of Jesus Christ, which God gave him to show his servants things which must shortly take place, and he sent and signified it by his angel to his servant John. And again, to signify it means to render it into signs. So we're not necessarily always doing the best thing. We try to make these things literal, but again, we need to decide where to draw that line. So some symbols for Jerusalem within the book of Revelation. The obvious ones are Sodom and Egypt. Maybe not as obvious to all people. We don't all agree on these things, but Babylon, the great harlot, the great city, is a picture of Jerusalem, and even possibly Patmos and Thyatira. If you watch the last couple of videos we looked at here, if you're willing to agree with what we proposed there. So today we're going to look at Pergamos as potentially Jerusalem, and there's actually only one verse that we're going to look at today because that's all we need here in Revelation chapter 2 regarding Pergamos. Jesus says, I know your works and where you dwell, where Satan's throne is, and you hold fast to my name and did not deny my faith even in the days in which Antipas was my faithful martyr, who was killed among you, where Satan dwells. So, some suspicious things about this verse. First of all, he talks about where Satan's throne is and where Satan dwells. Why would that be Pergamos? And question number two, who is this Antipas that is mentioned here? So, item number one, Satan's throne. If we were to look through the entire Bible and you never read the Revelation, but you read everything until you got to the book of Revelation, where would you assume Satan's throne to be? I think a safe bet would probably be Jerusalem. It certainly wouldn't be Pergamos because Pergamos was never mentioned outside of Revelation chapter 2. That's just something to keep in mind when we're talking about Satan's throne or where Satan dwells. Item number two, who is Antipas? This is a little more interesting thing here. Was he a martyr or a witness for Jesus? Clearly, most translations take that stance. Just, Antipas, my faithful martyr. But there's a question here. Can this verse be translated differently so that in the days of Antipas actually refers to the days in which Herod Antipas ruled over Jerusalem? We're going to look at that. I'm going to share some things in the description of the video, some links for you. But let's just first take this title, this saying, in the days of. In the New Testament, you have references to mostly kings when it talks about in the days of. So in the days of Herod the king, that's Herod the Great. Behold, wise men came from the east, came to Jerusalem. That's in Matthew chapter 2. And then in Luke chapter 1, it says, in the days of Herod, again, that was Herod the Great, the king of Judea, a certain priest named Zechariah of the division of Abijah. And then even in Acts chapter 11, it says a great famine throughout all the world occurred in the days of Claudius Caesar. So that term in the days of it often refers to kings or rulers. And in the New Testament, when it doesn't refer to kings or rulers, it still applies to people who are significant. Like you have in the days of Elijah, in the days of Lot, and even Jesus in the all the discourse he talks about as it was in the days of Noah. So every time you see that term in the days of, it's always someone significant. So the question is, who is this Antipas? Why was there something in the days of Antipas? Now, here's how the verse goes again. I know your works, where you dwell, where Satan's throne is, and you hold fast to my name, and did not deny my faith, even in the days of Antipas. Some have taken this and they believe that the Greek can be retranslated, just due to punctuation and other reasons, that this days of Antipas is actually referring to the days of Herod Antipas. And again, I'm going to put some links in the description. I have to put a disclaimer here. I am not a Greek expert. I have looked at this and I looked at their proposals. I'm not 100% sure. So part of me is fearful to even suggest this, but that's all it is. It's a suggestion. I think the question of, where Satan dwells alone is enough to look at this as Pergamos possibly being Jerusalem, but this would definitely be something that would add a lot more to the weight of the argument if indeed it can be translated as in the days of Herod Antipas. So I do encourage you to check it out. And if you are a Greek expert, please let me know if these translations are possible. So if Herod Antipas was the Antipas of Revelation chapter 2:13, then the faithful martyr or witness would most likely have to be John the Baptist. We know that Herod was associated with John the Baptist. In Mark chapter 6, we have Herod himself that sent and laid hold of John, that being John the Baptist, and bound him in prison for the sake of Herodias, his brother Philip's wife, for he had married her. And if you know the story goes on later, John the Baptist ends up getting beheaded by Herod. So that is Herod Antipas. So note here also, both Jesus and John the Baptist were killed in the days that Herod Antipas was ruling. So some conclusions here. I think Jerusalem fits Satan's throne very well, and Herod Antipas fits this Antipas better than any anonymous or unknown martyr named Antipas. That is, again, if the Greek translation is possible. And just some closing thoughts here. I'm starting to think that all of the significant cities in Revelation are simply symbols for Jerusalem. Just like the more I read Revelation, the more I start to see that all these significant angels are actually Jesus. So maybe that's the goal. We just keep reading Revelation and seeing these things, see more of Jesus, maybe even a little more of Jerusalem. Well, that's all for today. Feel free to share any questions or comments, especially regarding that Greek translation of Antipas there. And as always, contend earnestly for the faith which was once for all delivered to the saints, and God bless.